Hello and welcome to a new episode of Silver Blue. I'm Silvia and I'm here with.
BluJay, baby, greetings. I hope you guys are doing pretty damn well.
Yes, and today we have a super interesting topic, which is shadow work. BluJay is an expert of shadow work and he's gonna talk and explain, share with us a bit more about what this is, what is shadow work, and how it can help us really understand each other and go deep into what we are and what we want in life. So thank you, Jay, for sharing all your knowledge with us today.
Of course, I would not go as far as to call myself an expert. I'll get too cocky, but but
Well,
yeah.
the reason I'm saying you're an expert is because yesterday I asked you, what's shadow work? And then when you started talking, for me, it sounds like an expert
Okay.
talking about it. So, um,
That
I
works for
would
me.
say you're an expert,
I
more
can be
than
an
many of
expert.
us, at least. So, so I don't know. Do you want to start explaining a bit more about what shadow work is for someone who has never um, heard from that?
Definitely. So, shadow work is pretty much like, in a short summary, it's working on the dark side of yourself that silently walks with you. So it's like all of the, darker traits that you have. Maybe you're aware of some of these dark side traits. Maybe you're not. Um, some people are, controlled by their shadow side. Others know that it exists and just don't really call it the shadow self. So, for example, like parts of your shadow side are like your temper, or maybe dark desires. Sometimes it could be darker thoughts that you don't always give attention to, but you know that they are there, brewing inside of you or following you like a shadow does. Um, yeah, so in a short summary, like your shadow side and what the idea of shadow work normally is paying more attention to that darker side and finding a way to like cope with it, or finding a way to learn from it. So like your shadow self, it's a broad, like a really vast topic depending on the person. Some people have, a depressive shadow side. Others have a real temper. Other people have, so like I said, different things, dark desires, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I guess is whatever you don't really like about yourself, right? And
Hmm.
what we don't like, we usually try not to look at it. We're like, oh,
Exactly.
that doesn't exist. But the thing is that it does. It does exist. And if you don't pay attention to that, then it'll keep growing and growing and growing until it blows up. And without you being able to control it, right? So,
Absolutely.
why would you say why it's important to pay a close attention to our shadow?
So, especially in like the earlier stages of spiritual awakening and evolution, you really need to take into account that at the end of the day, yes, we are like infinite souls living a human experience,
Mhm.
but it's a human experience. And as humans, we do go through darker times. And so, like, you have to know how to, if you want to spiritually evolve, you have to know how to kind of like make peace with your dark side. You have to know how to, like, how do I say, you have to find a middle ground, pretty much.
Hmm.
You can't go on unaware of, the darker half of you because it's a part of you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, when you're not looking at it, you could almost think of it as something like the common misconception, I think, when people hear shadow work, they automatically think voodoo and like sorcery and stuff like that. But no, like you have to know how to use the darker parts of yourself for good. Or
Mm-hmm.
in another case, just realize that it's a part of you for a reason, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, yeah, and maybe what we said in other episodes, right? Like you can always find the hidden treasure from experiences that happen to you, like hard experiences or challenging experiences, but also parts of you that you might not like, but there's always a reason that part it's there, and it's probably telling you something, and there's probably a lesson to be learned from that, right? I think that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. Like
Absolutely.
in that shadow work, the more you get to know your shadow part, the more you can understand yourself and learn from that and evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way I like how you put it, like you can learn hidden treasures, like for example, there might be someone in your life that really like pisses you off, like somebody that makes you super upset. And maybe you
Mm.
don't even know why. It's just like, ugh, I don't like that person. This is where shadow work comes in, and it's like, what is it about this guy, this girl, or whatever that just irks my nerves?
Mm-hmm.
And when you look
Mm-hmm.
at it, it's like, okay, maybe it's the way you look. Maybe it's just the way you look. When I look at you, I want to fight. And you might think, like, well, that's kind of fucked up. Why is it that I feel this way? Is it jealousy? And then you go deeper down the rabbit hole and start breaking it down. Am I
Mm-hmm.
jealous because you look better than me, or is it because you're ugly? And I don't like ugly people. It really goes deep. Like,
And then why don't you like ugly people? What's your
yeah,
problem with ugly people?
exactly. Like,
What I heard about this is that usually what upset us about other people is what we don't want to see in ourselves or what we're like afraid of being. Like, so like if it really upset you that someone is selfish, maybe there's a selfish part of you that you don't want to see, because if
mm,
someone is selfish, that's their problem. Why are you getting so upset? Like there's,
right.
yeah, they might be selfish, but if it's affecting you, there's something about you that you need to like go like work.
That's a really good thing you pointed out, actually. Yeah, definitely. Like, um, yeah, it's like if you get mad about certain things,
Mm.
and people have different levels of anger, of course, but if you get mad about something that, for example, selfishness, right? If you know you wouldn't be selfish in a very specific situation
Mm.
and the other person is, it's kind of like you look at that, and maybe you explode in the moment, or maybe you address it in the moment, but then maybe you don't. So the shadow part, let's use this example real quick. The shadow part of you wants to react. Some people have a
Mm-hmm.
control, so you're not gonna react to someone that you're looking at like, dude, why wouldn't you just share that? It makes sense, but you don't say it out loud. You keep it to yourself, and you're annoyed with this person, but maybe they don't know. So later on, you come across another situation with the same person, and that shadow is now getting a little more like solidified because it's happened again. You're triggered again. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you still don't say anything. So where shadow work comes in is when you go and like meditate to yourself, or you sit and think about it. Like, why does this get on my nerves so bad?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a caring and generous person. Not me. I am, but no.
Yeah, in
But
general,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we all are. If you listen to this
Absolutely.
podcast, we know you are.
Absolutely. Something like that. I can be nice and generous. So yeah, like you think about it and you're like, okay, so I don't like this person because we don't have the same morals. I'm not a selfish person. And, you just start dissecting it. Like, it'll help you to understand what you value and like what you see is more important about, you know, the things you care about, I guess. There's a very specific way I was about to wrap that together. But I
Well, what was coming to my mind when you were talking about how, like when sometimes you see a person and then you see that person again, I think it's specific persons, but we also have patterns, like, and I think it's really clear to see this with partners or like relationships. Like
definitely.
when you get into relationships, there's usually things that repeat themselves, things that you don't like and keep coming. Not
Oh yeah.
only with one partner, but then you break up and then you're with someone else, and then you start seeing patterns and things that they are like, wait, I've seen this, I've seen this
Yeah,
before. And then that's a clear example of how it's usually not a specific person, it's more that like everything in your reality mirrors what you have inside, right? So like someone so important as a boyfriend or a girlfriend or someone, like someone who's so close to you, of course it's going to mirror so many things from you. And it might be that some people mirror some things and some other people mirror different things, but then you start seeing patterns. So I think it's especially in those cases when you start being like, wait, I've seen this from this person, and then again, it annoys me from this other person. So
yeah,
in that case, maybe it's time to stop for a second and think like, what is going on? Like, why is this repeating themselves? And is it really something they're doing wrong, or is it something that maybe I need to go inside and see what's
definitely.
going on inside me?
Yeah, definitely. That's a beautiful point you made there. Like being able to see the patterns in your reality. And since we're talking about shadow work, definitely the darker patterns is something you have to become aware of in order to work on it so that your reality changes from the inside out, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
let's say you're someone who constantly finds yourself in toxic relationships. What you might find on your shadow work journey is that you have toxic habits that you may not like, but they're there. And you just haven't been able to see them because you haven't looked close enough. So let's say there's someone, for some reason, every person that you've been with has been abusive to some extent, whether it's verbally, physically, and you're like, why am I always attracting someone who is abusive? And then you start thinking deeply about it. Maybe it's because I don't feel worthy enough of someone better for me. And why is that? Maybe there's things I don't like about myself. Maybe there's
Yeah,
things that I wish I could change, but I need someone to beat it out of me. It's crazy, but when you look at it, like there's things that you have to digest like that.
definitely. I think many times it's not that you're like, if you keep attracting, for example, toxic people or people
Hmm.
that are not good for you, it doesn't mean that you're toxic, but it means that there's something about you that you need to work. For example, your self-esteem. So
Hmm.
when something happens like that, you're like, no, no, like no way I'm like
Yeah.
accepting that. There's no way this is part of um myself. And also, um unconsciously, there are sometimes moments when we kind of are looking for something, even though we don't like it. But it's my mentor called this like your favorite flavors of suffering. Like there's flavors, there are things that you like about suffering, and then you keep bringing because it's like what we were saying the other day about being the victim. There's good things about being the victim. People pay attention to you
Mm.
because it's like well, there's so many bad things that happened to me, and then you can talk about that with other people, complain, other people will be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry all this is happening to you. I'm so sorry, life is so bad for you. It's horrible, but you're getting attention. Getting attention could
Mm-hmm.
be a flavor of suffering that you like, and that might prevent you from like growing from that and stop being a victim, right?
Mm.
So I think it's useful also to ask yourself, what parts am I liking from this challenges that I don't like, like are making me suffer. But there's probably something that is make you stay there, especially if you feel like you're stuck there and it just keeps repeating themselves itself.
Absolutely. And phew, you said a couple of things there that are like very profundo. So first of all, the flavors of suffering. Like one thing about shadow work, the work part is asking yourself the hard questions that no one else will really ask for you.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, asking yourself like, why do I keep on coming across this? Why do I enjoy this form of suffering? Or I mean, plenty of different questions arise. There was something else you said though. Give me a second.
You
Yeah,
come back to you.
it'll come back. It'll come back. Um, you had something else?
I mean, I wanted to ask you, when did you start working on your shadow work? And well, first, where did you first heard about hear about shadow work? And
Okay.
like, why did you start getting interested about that?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, so I was about 20, 19 or 20, and I was going through quite a heavy spiritual awakening. Like for the first time, I was very like in tune with my like psychic abilities, and I don't really talk much about those because people think I'm joking or whatever, but like,
Or you're crazy?
or I'm crazy, yeah. So I was going through a world of change, like a universe of change. Everything
Mm,
was just wow. And I became like hyper conscious, super aware. I started to look closer, within myself and started realizing how many things I hadn't realized about me ever.
mm,
So like, when I would get into like an argument with my siblings or whatever, instead of being my natural like impulsive self, like I'd stop for a minute and just be quiet. Like if I wanted to scream or yell, I would just pause and go sit down quietly. Like normally, and the crazy part was like I would sit in a dark room and just feel it all. I wouldn't. It was
that's brave.
crazy. Yeah, it was brave because like turning the lights off for some reason, it made me feel like nobody was watching in a sense, and I felt like I could sit alone with my thoughts.
Mm.
Um, I started looking at, I don't know, I think YouTube started recommending videos on spiritual awakening and stuff, and I came across something about shadow work. And I happened to be doing the shadow work at the time without realizing it. So when I heard about it a little bit more, I was like, okay, so is this what I'm doing? Like,
Many people are in this, maybe many people are in this situation right now that they have never heard about this, but now they listen to us and they're like, oh, actually I've done that, I just didn't call it shadow work before.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like I started watching the videos and it started to make a little bit more sense. And then I got into earlier on in my spiritual journey, I just got into like looking at things, for example, my rage. That's something that comes from like my father's side of my bloodline. Ooh. um, the thing I was able to do and realize was that the rageful side of my, shadow side, at one point it was something that controlled me until I learned to work through it and gain control of it. So, through that process, at first rage was something that, when it was something that I couldn't control, it was more like impulsive things would happen that, I could have handled things much better, in different conflicts or confrontations, but I didn't have the
We
patience.
want examples.
Yeah. Let me think of some examples. Okay, one good one is I got into a lot of fights when I was young. A lot of fights. I remember there was a kid on the school bus who said something. I don't even think it was to me. He said something to, I think, my cousin or a friend of mine. And I remember saying something like, "What was that?" And then I blacked out. When I came back into, and this was on a school bus.
E.
When I came back into reality, I was standing over the guy with my fist up like this, and then I just was like, "Oh shit!" Like I stopped,
My God.
and then I heard the bus driver say something. I didn't get expelled or anything, which is kind of crazy, but I do remember. Man, no, I don't even remember how that really ended. But here's the dangerous side of that was I did not have control, literally. Like
Mm.
that shadow side of myself way back then and I was a child. But it was almost addictive, that blackout feeling. And I just remember my arms moving and not wanting to stop. So later on, I was able to gain control of that rage and I started wrestling.
Mm.
Wrestling taught me not to be so impulsive, rather be strategic, patient, technical, and not always violent. Yes, a little bit rough and a little firm, but not violent. So part of my shadow work journey was learning how to use levels of aggression for different things, not for violence, not for hate, not for inflicting pain on others, but like what I use that for nowadays is like in my look. If I don't like something, all I have to do is look at you and you'll understand it. And just, oh, okay, yep, don't push any further. Like,
And that's a powerful skill to have.
yeah,
So wow, that's crazy how you were able to transform something that at the beginning might seem like a super bad thing to have, right? Like
hmm
this rage that you can't even control into something that is actually useful for life.
absolutely. That is shadow work, using it to your advantage, using it
Nice.
to make you a better person or a more fit individual.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think are things that helped you in that process of transforming? So you said you started wrestling, but is there anything you started doing on yourself, like meditating or any kind of techniques you started using to actually see this part of you and transform it into something else?
Absolutely. I would say the biggest transformational tool was journaling.
Mm.
And specifically journaling like when I got upset about something. So writing my angry thoughts out first of all, rather than just,
Keep them inside.
yeah, keeping them inside or even letting them all the way out verbally on whoever I
Mm.
was pissed off at the time. Like what helped, I'll give the best example. I remember me and my little sister, my oldest little sister, we used to butt heads a lot. 5 year difference. Um, but like it was during quarantine as well. We all lived in the same place, couldn't leave for like 6 months. And I was in a house full of women. Again, love women. But estrogen levels versus testosterone is quite a battle when it comes to that. Like three sisters, grandmother, and my mom. So anyway, um, I remember she would do certain
You were in
things.
paradise.
Paradise. Yeah, right. I kind of was though. We did live in a penthouse that overlooked the mountains, the sea,
Beautiful.
the city. Yeah, so it was beautiful. But yeah, that was another reason that I had to go through the shadow work. I was like, what? I cannot be mad right now. So she would do certain things that we just wouldn't agree on, but she hadn't learned much at all about shadow work or anything involving that. So when I would have to combat explosiveness and impulsivity, I don't know if that's the word.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I had to sit back for a moment and think. First of all, she's younger than me by 5 years. I got to be the older, more mature, the bigger person. And instead of blowing up on my little sister, who again is a woman, a female. So it's like one thing I learned through this shadow work journey as well is like women are creatures of emotion, men are creatures of logic, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I prefer to see it as like female and male energy, and we both have
Yeah,
both, so it's not like black and
absolutely.
white. But yeah, yeah,
I
I
agree
agree.
with that. It felt weird coming out of my mouth actually too. So the natural feminine, oh, that's another episode. But divine feminine and divine masculine. So yeah, instead of arguing with her, I would go, like sit down, go back to my space. It got to a point where I didn't need it to be dark. Um, I'd start writing down how I felt about whatever situation it was.
Hmm.
I would journal out, first of all, everything I felt and wished I would have said in the moment. Violent
Wow.
things. Not violent things, but, of course, like angry. And
Okay, so not things you wish you had said after thinking about it, but just things that you wanted to say in the
yeah,
moment.
exactly. Things I wanted to say, things that would have just impulsively exploded out of me, but instead I just got to
And then
writing real
and
fast.
then burn that paper or something.
So I didn't burn it. After I wrote it down, I would like read it and realize like, okay, this is how I feel. And then I'd ask myself, why?
Hmm.
Why did it make me mad? Why did it, upset me? And after I asked those questions, I slowly like worked myself through it into a calm space. Then realizing, okay, we're two different people. I have my views, she has her views. Whether it was right or wrong, it was a disagreement. And I'd come to a conclusion of, okay, this is one thing about my shadow that I now know for the future. And that's how I would pretty much like solve certain things of that nature. That makes sense.
It makes sense. So, like, you would learn something about yourself from that? Like, can you give an example? Like, what did you learn from these arguments with your sister?
Yeah, so like one thing I learned was one thing I did not like about myself. I didn't like, this is crazy, but I didn't like how impulsive I could get with the opposite gender. Like, I didn't like the fact that, if I was expressing myself naturally, like naturally speaking on my anger and what I felt, how it would make my sister feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't call names or anything or be disrespectful, but I realized that it made her feel like less. And in turn she would react more. So it started making me like really watch my tone. It started making me I started realizing like I have to speak a very specific way to get a point across. And I wasn't doing that before. So I didn't like the way that I handled conflict, and I learned how to do it in a different manner.
Okay. So you were like, yeah, you learned how to communicate better, basically.
Definitely. How to communicate better and how to really see from another perspective before getting upset about it. So like
Mm-hmm.
put myself in other people's shoes and try to understand um where they're coming from before I even allow myself to get
Mm-hmm.
upset.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's
Yeah,
carried on with me until today. Like it takes a lot to really make me mad.
it does. I still haven't haven't figured out how to do it.
Facts. I don't think you'll ever get there. You don't make me mad.
um but yeah, I think that's even another episode, like communication and like how to use the well, first, what's the in like the intention where when you come to a, and this is a little bit out of topic, but really quick, like what's the intention when you start a conversation or like an argument with someone?
Hmm.
Is like, is like listening to the other person and come to an agreement, or you just want to like say your point and you don't want to listen or like change, and you're not willing or open to change your opinion. That completely changed the game, right? And
Hmm.
then the way you express yourself, and you can be like attacking the other person and blaming the other person, or you can be like, well, this what you did made me feel this way. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not because of you, maybe it's more because of things that I need to, but just changing that, just from like you did this to this made me feel this way. This completely changes the conversation, because the other person doesn't feel like attacked.
Yeah.
um and that's
No,
something.
that definitely reminded me too of another thing that I did not like about myself is what I used to do was I would normally get all of my shit out. Like I didn't care to hear what the other person had to say. I was angry and I needed to be heard. And it was
Mm.
funny because I started to realize I was like, that's kind of not masculine, is what it felt like. I was like, that's not really what I want to identify with. I don't want to be the guy that um, gets mad, says his piece, and then walks away and without giving the other person a chance to express themselves.
Yeah, for me it's not being masculine or feminine, it's about being mature or not mature, right?
Yes, but remember,
It's
this
like,
is the early stages. I was really like trying
mm-hmm,
to dissect like
mm-hmm,
what is masculinity, what is femininity, and that's how my brain was working. I was like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like me as a man. So I need to
mm-hmm.
change this shit
Yeah,
immediately.
so it was not the man you wanted to be or
Exactly.
become. That's not how you wanted to be. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's that changes the whole thing when you start realizing those things. And also like seeing it from the other perspective, when you have realized that it doesn't make any sense to just like go out and like, speak what you say, what your truth, and like not listening to the rest. Then when you see people doing it, you can also like understand where they're coming from, and being
Yeah.
like, instead of blaming them and being like, or like taking it personally, you can be like, well, that person still in that, in that
In that
stage,
phase, yeah.
in that
And
phase. Yeah.
yeah. And then like that was another thing that I learned as well. Um and this was one of the harder parts of my journey was it became like a chess game in a sense. Like I remembered realizing what my sister would have wanted to hear. If
Mm.
she's going off and she's you do this and blah, 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 and I'm sitting here like, okay, so reacting is not gonna work because we're just gonna blow each other's
Make
heads
things work.
off. Yeah, it's gonna be bad. So
Mm.
instead, I learned, I was okay, well, I have to approach this differently. What's happening right now is she's upset and she wants to be heard and she wants to know that she's being heard. So what I
Mm.
started learning how to do was I would listen very carefully and repeat back to her what she's feeling. So I would say, okay, what you mean to say is I was in the wrong and I made you feel like this, and for that you're angry or upset with me, right? Yes, okay, that's what it is. And so I say, now I apologize because I didn't know that's what was going on. I didn't know you felt that way, and I do apologize. I was wrong for that. I would say that even if I didn't feel like I was wrong, which was the
Now your sister is gonna listen to this episode and be like, "What?"
she understands now. We are tight. Me and my sister are
Okay.
tight. But yeah, like at the time, even if I felt like, you know, I didn't do anything wrong, I would listen to her and make sure that she knew she was being heard at the least, and then apologize for whether it was something I did or how she felt. I would just apologize because it made her feel valid, like she
Yeah.
wasn't just mad for no reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's something, again, I don't like this like gender thing, but that's something that I think is kind of
Hmm.
common between uh women and like males,
Yeah,
is that um many times, like I know from myself and from like other friends, like, you just want to express your emotions and
yeah,
feel like the other person understands, and that's enough. Like there's not need to find a solution, there's no need to do anything different. It's just like you felt something and you just want the other person to understand how you felt. So
right,
just what you did is exactly what you need in that moment, right? Like just like someone, like the other person, and acknowledging that that happened, and maybe, yeah, like saying, I'm sorry, I didn't know that happened, I didn't know that was gonna affect you, whatever. And that's
right,
enough for make you feel good, right? But what happens sometimes, or what I face sometimes when especially in relationships, is like you express yourself and then the other person is trying to like logically find, either like prove you that you're saying that is nonsense what you're saying.
yeah,
So like, but like, I just I guess it's a matter of
yeah,
using the logic versus using the emotions.
right,
When you
right,
speak from the emotions and the answer comes from like the logical part, is a bit like oof, and then that just grows and grows and that can
yeah,
turn up very badly. But yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Like, and that was a really big growth period in time as well because my shadow side was met with my spiritual side, and it was like, who's gonna be in control in this moment? Are we gonna be
Mm.
understanding? Are we gonna be, transformative? Are we gonna allow this to be
And
said and not
I'm
react?
imagining the movie Inside Out and the different emotions and like anger being like, let me take the control.
Yeah,
Like,
literally. It was like that, but just imagine like two, kind of like the angel and the demon on the other side.
um,
And like it was like react, scream, and then it's like, no,
and
that's
then
not
Joy
gonna do
like,
anything. You're like, no, 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 no. Listen, feel, understand,
no.
interpret. And so
Mm-hmm.
like at the end it was just like, yeah, I mean, I remember we would have conversations. I'd be like, I mean, I'm pissed off too. I can't scream at you. I'm not gonna do that. We're gonna talk this out and we're gonna make it right. But first you gotta understand that I hear you and I'm listening and I
Mm-hmm.
understand and I apologize. Now
Mm-hmm.
let me explain how I feel. Do I have the floor? May I speak? Like I
And
changed
probably you
so
did,
much.
right, at that point, once the other person have
Yeah,
feels like
like when she
you
felt
listen to
heard,
them.
yeah, when she felt heard and let everything out, sometimes she would speak for 30, 45 minutes. And I just,
Wow,
yeah,
a podcast.
a whole podcast. And I just listened, because it would be things that she never said, but had always
Mm.
felt, and she'd let it all out. So it gave me
Mm.
different perspective, and I was okay. Now I can understand why you feel this way, and it helped me with my shadow work as well. So yeah.
That's beautiful. So that's beautiful. Going back to shadow work,
Mm,
what are some of the challenges you faced while working on your shadow? Is there things that were like actually like not easy to like acknowledge or like kind of like
yeah,
yeah, acknowledge that they're there, or like what are the biggest challenges you faced?
definitely were some challenges. It feels like a long, long time ago. Like I've
Hmm.
really just kind of become a brand new identity. But yeah, I do remember there being
There's no
challenges.
shadow anymore.
Of course, there's a shadow. Definitely. Definitely. Um, yeah, one of the biggest challenges was finding, it's crazy because this seems to be my answer a lot of times, but finding balance. So, like, it felt like there had to be a line drawn somewhere, not letting people talk to me any kind of way they want to, without some kind of reaction, but also not having a reaction that is catastrophic. So, like, I had to learn how to,
That's so important. That's
yeah,
yeah.
very important. Like, I had to learn how to be able to take criticism, um, be able
But
to,
without like
yeah, like, and be able to, like, tolerate certain things without it
mm,
being something that completely, like, changes my character in the moment.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
sometimes, like, the challenge was, like, you don't have time to sit here and write this shit out. You have to right now decide who you're gonna be.
mm-hmm. Make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, finding a balance and learning how to find that balance like in real time. Like if I was
Mm-hmm.
out somewhere where I didn't have my pen and paper, like, what has to be decided has to be decided now. Or other things like
Mm-hmm.
confronting certain parts of myself that I just did not want to. Like there were moments where I was just like, I don't feel like tapping into that subject. Like that can come later.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And yeah, you need to be brave to work on your shadow. Like it's not something, well, I don't want to say easy. Like I don't want to say limiting beliefs. it is it is
that was cute.
a challenge. It's something that is gonna make you feel different things and you need to manage them.
Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting what you said about balance. I think I definitely feel like it's key. For example, in the example you were giving about the communication with your sister, if you were like if you change extremes from like like just reacting and like not listening, if you went to the opposite extreme of like not sharing how you felt and just being like yeah whatever, like you're right, that's equally wrong, like
Equally wrong.
that was not gonna change anything, or like that was not gonna solve the problem, because then you would start feeling like you were not expressing how you felt. So like it's good to express how you felt,
Hmm.
it's just a matter of how you do it, right? So like this is so like assertiveness and all that, how you say things. It's not about not saying or like saying it anyway, like what, like in the, no matter how you say it. It's about saying it, but yeah, in a balance, right? Like first listening to the other person and then saying it in a way that you don't attack. So I think it's actually like an art.
It definitely is an
The
art.
art of living.
Yeah, definitely. And real quick, like one thing I want to say too, just so that no one gets confused, right? But shadow work is it's a journey that you have with yourself. It's not something that you should out loud share all the way, like with just anybody, especially. You want to be able to come back to you, and it's really, it should be a sacred and like personal thing. If you
Mm-hmm.
have a mentor that you're trusting of and someone that you can talk to about it as you go,
Mm-hmm.
then that's good. But mostly you need to
Mm-hmm.
be able to look within yourself, because like it does get uncomfortable at times, and like you're really going to be testing yourself. Like the most important part of this is being able to look at the things that you're afraid to look at or that you're ashamed to look at. You
Mm-hmm.
might not want to share that with the whole world. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really personal thing to share. And yeah, it's like sharing your weakness, right? You don't want to share your weakness with
Yeah.
your enemy, or
Yeah, yeah.
it's something you want to work on. Yeah, like especially if you have like a mentor who's guiding you in the process, which is actually very helpful.
Mhm.
Um, then yes, of course, in that situations. But yeah, I understand that you shouldn't. Well, you can do whatever you want, but maybe it's not that useful to just start sharing this with everyone, being like, oh, I'm working on this, because also then,
Yeah.
imagine like I'm working on my rage, and then one day something happens that triggers you, and then
Boom.
you react, and then people are like, oh, I thought you
Thought
were
you were
working
working
on
on your
your
rage. Oh. Oh, you're like that. Like, nah. And that another key that I want to be real about is like one of the keys, big keys to shadow work is being 100,000% real with yourself. Like,
Hmm.
do not be shy. This is exactly why you don't want to tell everybody, because there's things that you're gonna discover about yourself and things that you're gonna like tap into that's like, whoa, like, and especially the more you like go down the rabbit hole, you're gonna start to like realize stuff that's like, wow, I would have never come to this conclusion had I not looked and had I not been honest with me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can play double agent. You can ask your friends, you can ask your family, like, what's something I do that makes you mad? Or what's something that I do that you don't like? It might resonate with
But
you.
just get mentally prepared for that
Yeah,
first.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. You gotta kind
Because
of
I
be
don't,
experienced for double agents.
there's this, it's been a while since I thought about this concept, but there's this thing about, what you know about yourself, then what you share with the world, like the image you give, and then I don't know how it goes, but basically there's a part of it that is like what people know from you that you're not conscious about that.
Hmm.
So that part, you can ask people and start like learning about this part of you that you're actually not conscious about you. But once you start asking people around you, everyone will agree in certain things. That's really interesting and something that is going to help you understand yourself a lot. But you also need to be prepared for that, because it's
Yeah.
usually things that, because you don't usually see it, like you are not conscious about it, something that is going to surprise you and maybe even feel like they're attacking you at first.
Yeah, that's honestly, I wouldn't even go as far as to like tap into that double agent side until you've done this for a few months at least. Like you gotta be real, you know, secure in yourself and in your shadow work journey before you start really taking in the opinions of others, because you have to have like emotional maturity for that. And at the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
the shadow work journey, that's a little difficult to have, at first, because you're still
Yeah.
learning so much. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's is again a change of perspective. Like, stop seeing things that you don't like about yourself, or that people don't like about yourself, as like things. How can I say it? Like, stop seeing it as like something you can't change and you don't want to know about it, and change, and like start seeing it as things that can help you grow as a person, right? And if your like final goal in life is to become the best version of yourself, then all that situations, every time you have a conflict with someone, every time something triggers you, you're gonna, it's actually something good, because it's gonna make you grow. But of course, you need to like, it needs to be a balance, because if you're if you're triggering yourself all the time, you might not have like the time and the
Right.
energy to just go through all of them, and you might feel just overwhelmed, right?
Right. That's it. Um, I kind of want to tap on a subject so that, and I'm gonna have to be very transparent actually, because I don't want people thinking that, shadow work is just about sadness or anger or frustration, right?
Mm-hmm.
It goes deep. So, like, one thing that really calls out to me during my personal shadow work and spiritual journey, right? When I was younger, I was very, very sexually active, and it got to a point where it felt like an addiction, and I did not like that. I didn't like it, but I didn't pay any attention to it until it got to a point where I could no longer like ignore it. And I started to think, I was like, what hole am I trying to fill? No pun intended. But what
Okay.
gap am I trying to fill in my life? It was like there was a couple of different things that I was trying to make up for. One, I didn't feel like I was receiving enough love at home. I didn't feel like a strong connection with my siblings. I didn't feel a strong connection with my parents because they were always like, kind of separated or arguing about something. Um, so that was one thing. I felt like I needed a love connection with someone.
Mm.
So I almost tried to have it with like everyone, which I didn't like. Another thing was like I felt like I was lacking a sense of confidence, like like a deep sense of self confidence, and it was
Mm-hmm.
annoying even realizing that and looking at it like um I use sexual encounters as like a substitute.
Mm-hmm. Like to prove you that
Yeah,
you were.
to prove that
Yeah.
I can be confident or to prove that,
That
because
you were
women
sexy,
like
that
me,
that
yeah,
people, yeah, because we, yeah.
it was like validating me. So yeah, looking at looking at things like that, it led me to a different part of my spiritual journey, which can also be talked about in another episode, but it led me down a path of retention. Like I stopped having sex completely and I realized like that was something I needed to change in order to bring a balance to my shadow side and to like heal my sexual energy altogether.
Mm.
It was a whole
Mm-hmm.
journey, and I was just like, no, this is not something I'm gonna use as like self gratification or gratification to uh, bring about and open different channels of happiness. I can't use it like that. It has to be something that's natural and yeah, but all of that to say shadow work has different realms that you will open up to. It's not just about things that frustrate you and other people or it goes really
Mm.
deep. Like you have to be able to look at your actions on a daily basis and really question like, okay, why do I do this? Why do I eat so much? Like some people eat because, they're mad or depressed, or it's like, nah, I
Mm.
need something sweet right now because I don't feel good. Let me go find something to eat.
Yeah, there's so many ways we express those things, right? Like, yeah, like sex or eating or like
Smoking,
I don't know,
drinking.
smoke. Yeah, and like it doesn't mean, well, smoking and drinking, yes, but it doesn't mean sex is bad. Bad. It doesn't mean eating is bad, right?
Right,
It's just the meaning you're giving it to it, and like why, like the intention behind what has to change.
right. And it may not be something that clicks like that. You have to sit down and like really ask yourself. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, the thing that made me realize that sex was not like good for me in the way that I was using it was how I would feel afterwards. I would just be like, I felt normally like empty, and I was like, why the hell do I feel like this? That was fun. It should have been fun. But why do I feel
Mm-hmm.
so dead inside right now? So that's where the shadow work there started to take
Yeah.
place.
That's a clue. Like find out when do you feel empty, when do you feel things are like not shouldn't be this way, are not supposed to be this way, and then start seeing what's wrong there.
Absolutely.
Um, I think it's about time to start finishing this episode. But I don't know if you have some like final advice or some final like technique, idea, something that might help someone who's listening to start their own shadow work journey.
Absolutely. I'm going to give this first key of advice. I've already given a few, so like definitely start journaling. I would say it doesn't have to be right after a moment of whatever the case, a shadow moment.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
One thing I would say is start soul gazing. And what I'm gonna do is say what soul gazing is stand in front of the mirror and just look into your eyes.
Ooh.
Be very, very transparent with yourself by looking at the soul that is looking back at you.
Mm-hmm.
Feel everything and don't judge your thoughts. Do it quietly. Talk to yourself if you need to. You know what I mean? But whatever. But soul gaze. Look at who you are, and you'll start to get
Mm-hmm.
so many answers. It could be for 5 minutes, 10, 30, whatever. But soul gaze.
Wow.
Look at you. And you'll get a lot of answers out of that. That's what I'm gonna wrap this up with.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's perfect to finish it with that. I'm gonna do it myself.
Me too.
And it sounds like a magical exercise to do. I can't wait to see the what happens there.
Definitely.
But thank you so much, Jay, for sharing all this knowledge. Thank you, listener, for being there. I hope this was useful. And we'll see each other in next episode. We love
Los
you.
quiero muchísimo. Bendiciones.